What's warmer, wool or fleece? Today we're going to test and find out. Now there's loads of different blankets types available in both wool and synthetic fabrics. There's pros and cons of each outside of how warm they can keep you. You know, wool is flame retardant and has some sort of level of natural moisture resistance. You know, it's reputed to keep you warm and wet. Synthetics also don't absorb moisture, which is super good and are much lighter. But for instance, for use near a campfire, are not so safe. So whilst there are different pros and cons, the thing I'm most interested first in understanding is which one is going to be more effective at keeping me warm in a winter wild camping setup. So equipment for the test. Now the premise is super simple. I'm using heated water, putting that water within 3 identical cups, using 1 cup as a control, so uninsulated, and wrapping the other 2 cups in a single layer of the blanket material, cinched with a clothes peg. All 3 cups will be topped with a identical lid, and all 3 cups will be filled with an identical amount of heated water, in this case 200 millilitres. Then by taking temperature readings at 5-minute intervals using my infrared thermometer, I'm hoping to get a good view of how much heat is lost from the water over the course of the test. The first 2 blankets I'm going to test today are the standard British Army issue style wool blanket, super popular with bushcrafters and wild campers, etc., but quite heavy, and a standard fleece blanket, sort of medium weight, probably not dissimilar to a mid-layer fleece jacket effectively. So here's the test set up in action. I'm doing this test in my conservatory on the kids' art table. It's a fairly constant temperature in here, removes other factors such as breeze, etc. from the equation. Essentially every 5 minutes I'm coming in here, removing the lid of each 200 milliliter water in turn, taking a surface temperature reading with the infrared thermometer, noting these down, and then repeating in the next 5 minutes. So test run results. So over the course of the half an hour or so of the test, I also took a reading 60 minutes later. We can see quite clearly this is the reading number from 1 to 7 and the temperature in Celsius. Bottom line here, most heat loss. This is the control, so the uninsulated cup. And as we'd expect, this did lose more heat than the other 2 lines. Now, we can see here the black fleece is the dotted line. This did lose a bit more heat than the army wool blanket. So the army wool blanket was more effective at insulating the cup and keeping it warmer for longer. So in total, the control lost about 12 degrees Celsius in temperature. The fleece lost about 10 degrees and the army wool lost about 9 degrees or so. Now, if we apply a tiny little bit of schoolboy physics around heat loss, so the quantitative heat loss is the mass of the water times the specific heat capacity of water, which is 4.18 times the change in temperature. We get ourselves some numbers to quantify it. So the control lost about, uninsulated cup lost about 15 kilojoules of energy. The army blanket lost about 12 kilojoules of energy, and the black fleece lost about 13 kilojoules of energy. So the winner was the army blanket with about 7% less energy lost than the black fleece. So the results of test 1 were pretty clear. The standard black fleece blanket was simply not as warm in a single layer as the standard British Army style wool blanket. However, this is less than half the weight per square metre as the wool blanket, 242 grams per square metre here versus the 558 for the wool blanket. So let's up the competition a bit and see if we can test a fleece blanket that's a little bit closer in weight to the woolen blanket. So I'm going to roll out this bad boy, which is a double layered fleece. You've got a micro fleece on one side and a pile fleece on the other side. Now this is more of a sofa throw than a camping blanket, but interestingly it comes in a lot closer, just over 500 grams per square metre in weight to the British Army wool blanket. So let's see how this stacks up in competition. One thing you do notice immediately with the thicker fleece blanket is the loft that thick pile brings to it versus the single layer army wool blanket. So on to test 2 results, and we can see that the tide has turned slightly in favour of the fleece this time around. So again, as we would expect, the control lost the most temperature. Again, a similar amount as you'd expect to the first test. This time though, the brown fleece, which is this time is the dotted line, actually lost slightly less temperature than the army wool blanket. So that heavy pile fleece wool blanket, which weighs a similar amount to the wool blanket, actually retained heat a little bit better. And again, applying the same maths as in the first time, we can see it this way. The control in this case lost about 14 kilojoules of energy, army blanket 10.5, and brown pile fleece 9.2 kilojoules. So in this round, the brown fluffy synthetic blanket was the winner, lost around 13% less energy than the army blanket. So there we have it. First set of tests. There's a lot more to test and a lot more interesting insights to get. What we've seen is that the army wool blanket is certainly a little bit warmer than a sort of standard fleece blanket, but if you start to get weight for weight in the synthetics, that can outperform this kind of wool blanket. Now obviously there's different weaves, there's different ways of doing this. It would be interesting to see how different types of wool blanket performed as well, and I'll do a follow-up video maybe trying some different wool combinations. Another thing I'd like to see is how things go with layering. So of course this fleece blanket was about half the weight of the wool blanket, but if we did double layers of this, how would that compare? Or how much do 2 layers of this wool blanket insulate compared to 1 layer? Lots of interesting stuff there. Now my objective for these tests is to create a effective natural fabric based sleep system for wild camping use, primarily in sort of wild and mountainous parts of the UK, in all but really the sort of coldest depths of winter. So other things I'll be testing in coming weeks are the addition of silk sleeping bag liners. How much does that add in terms of insulation capability, as well as using a blanket or sleeping bag based system within this waxed cotton bivy bag I've created for this test. So please like and subscribe if you'd like to see future tests and learn more about how to build a effective natural fabric based sleeping system for UK climate.